Welcome back to Tuesday Map, where we go into a little more detail on our topic for the week. This is fusion writing, where building character meets creating structure. And this week, the structure that we're creating is leveraging the midpoint of your story, and it meets empathy. So, as always, we'll let Victoria start us off.
Hello, friends, anti-novelists, Lilligans, and curious onlookers. So if you listened in yesterday, you know that we are forging ahead in helping you develop the best story that you can alongside the best characters that you can create. So with that said, the reason that I chose leveraging the midpoint as our topic is because if you're feeling either overwhelmed or you're trying to make decisions about how to progress through your story, a simple way to look at it, to break it down, is to start in the middle. As I mentioned yesterday, James Scott Bell had a great book called Write Your Story from the Middle. And his contention is if you begin at the point where your main character has a transformation, maybe it's in their attitude, it's in their situation, it's in how they're handling something, whatever that midpoint change is, it empowers them to continue on through to the end of the story and thereby get to the finale. So let's break that down a little bit and look at it. I'm referring to my plot cheat sheet, which I've given to you before. That's in your downloads. And it simply lines out the 8 major plot points. So you've got 2 acts that take place after. So in the 2 acts that take place before the midpoint, that's basically your setup. It's something that I like to refer to as the offering. This is where you're making an offer to your reader that this story is going to be interesting and worthwhile, that the characters are going to be fun and they're going to be loved by your reader, that this story is going to be worth investing their time in. So this is where you're hooking them into the story. You're giving them those zing moments that make them go, wow, this is going to be so much fun. That's your setup. That's act 1 and 2. But where that ends up, as I just said, is at the middle. The midpoint is where your character has to make a change. They have to discover something. Well, how do you do that? You do it with 2 things. You do it with milestones, which I like to call the plot points or the plot beats, and you do it with discoveries. By leveraging milestones and discoveries to get to and beyond the midpoint of the story, that's how you get your reader through to the end. You're using each discovery, each little bit of information, and that can be external information like clues in a mystery, or it can be internal revelations, like Kathleen's going to talk about empathy and how your character is relating to other people. That's a critical piece when you think about it. When you're drafting out your character and their transformation and their journey, you're thinking about maybe at the midpoint, they have a realization about their relation to the villain, or maybe they have a realization about their relationship with one of the antagonists. Remember, an antagonist doesn't have to be a villain. An antagonist can just be another character that poses a challenge or some kind of obstacle that pushes your character to grow, whereas your villain is your big bad guy. So as you're approaching and moving beyond that middle point, think about, what can I have as an antagonist that helps push my character to make that change in the middle? It can be an antagonist by proxy, like the weather. Maybe there's a terrible storm and your main character gets marooned somewhere with an antagonist who keeps saying to them, you shouldn't do that. It's too dangerous. It's too risky. You can't do it. They're not a villain, but they're standing in the way and discouraging your character from their growth. And now that your character is stuck in the storm with this antagonist, they're going to have to deal with it and either give up because it's too risky and dangerous, or they're going to press on and move past the middle. Those are all the choices that you have to make as the writer. This is when it gets really fun, because after they start making these, or after they start reaching these milestones, they're going to start making discoveries. Again, they can be external clues or they can be internal transformations, which is where you're going to turn to your character traits, because that's going to help you understand how are you shifting the balance of how this character is changing. both internally and how they represent and interact with other people. So then you're going to push through to the end of the story. That's your settlement. That's the finale. That's when you tie everything up in a bow and you settle where this character has ended up on their journey versus where they began before they made all of their discoveries and met their milestones. So when you get to the settlement, you make a choice. You're either going to end the story there, or you're going to offer another little cliffhanger that launches your reader into the next step in the series, the next book, and so forth. So let's take one quick look at how do you do this on paper? Well, it's what I like to call a mind map. This is just a piece of a calendar that I've torn out of a desk blotter. I literally folded it in the middle, so I have a physical midpoint. And then on the first half, I sketched out in little bubbles my character points. What does my character know before the story starts? What do they find out during the first half? When they get to the middle, what are they thinking and what's happening? And then, starting at my midpoint, which is the fold, I go through to the second half and I write out those same things. Now that they've made a change in their attitude or their situation at the middle, what do they know now? How are they going to use this new information? How is this transformation or change going to affect the balance of their traits and their emotions? And then you write through to the end. So that's a simple way to just lay it out on a timeline with a midline down the middle and start writing in each direction, just sketching it out. It doesn't have to be very detailed, doesn't have to be full sentences. It can just be bullet points, but you're just starting from where you make a change and you're going in either direction to figure out where did they begin and what were their deficits and where do they end up and how have they grown. So that's a high-level overview of how you start in the middle and work bi-directionally to get your character where they need to be on their journey. We'll be going way deeper into this next month when we get to week 1 of month 3, because next week, as you might recall, is our Zettelkasten week, and I can't wait to talk you through that. But for now, think about the midpoint and what your character needs to do to get themselves to the middle and then to right on through to the end. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Kathleen, and let her talk about empathy.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I really enjoyed that, and I can't wait to use what you've been teaching. Well, empathy is such a rich character group. When we dive down into it, we will find in future weeks, future months, that empathy alone breaks down into 4 subgroups, and they break down even further. There's a total of 13 individual character traits in the area of empathy. It's incredibly rich. But to begin with, when we first start exploring it, the best way to think about it is just from personal experience of relationships with other people. When are they smooth? When are they rewarding? When are they rich and fulfilling? When are they gravelly and difficult? When do you feel upset with relationships to others? When do you feel put upon that you're being asked to give too much? When do you wonder if you can give all that you've promised to give? So many questions that we can reach to our personal experience to enrich our stories before we even dive into all of the details of all of those character traits. For our character, for that midpoint transition, empathy gives us a rich source of change material. Think about it. If you think about, we can think about it from ourselves in terms of, well, what changes have I made in life and how has that enriched me? But there's actually a fun way of thinking about it, a kind of a fantasy land way of thinking about it. Think about the people that you find kind of gravelly. What changes would you make in them? You see, that's the fun of writing. You get to change the people that are giving your character fits, or give your character a character trait that needs to change for them to be fully themselves. Fiction is just so grand to put on different ideas and behaviors that you would never do in real life, because you don't want to hurt the feelings of people that you love or suddenly be a different person to someone, from who you've always been. But, oh, you can play with things on paper in so many rich ways. So when you think about your midpoint, I mean, there's lots of choices for what that change could be, but maybe it's a change in their relationships. What kind of a change could it be? Could it be the kind of a change where suddenly an irresponsible character suddenly realizes that, oh, people are counting on me? I better follow through with this, even though it's way harder than I thought it was going to be. That could be a big transition. It could be a transition of trustworthiness. The villain could be come into play here, where suddenly the character has to make a decision about trustworthiness of a character they're observing. Maybe they've been going along thinking this villain was a guru, and now their attitude has to change to this person because they're beginning to see cracks in the facade, and they're beginning to wonder whether this character is trustworthy. And then how's he going to get out of the situation that when he's gone down the road so far with this character that now it's like, where is that character trying to lead me? Maybe it's a society, a structure of society, like maybe it's a study in courtesy and what on earth has happened to courtesy, and what could change in a moment of courtesy that opens the door to meeting a new character. Maybe that character is the Yoda figure for your hero, and just by a moment of pleasantry has an opportunity to meet someone that's going to help them really come to whole new sets of insights. All of these interactions with people are very, very rich with potential for changes for those pivot points. And you know what else is rich about it? Because interactions show up in conversations so readily, it gives you a wonderful ability to describe the situation before and the situation after the change, because you can simply show them your character interacting with others, and your reader can see for themselves the change that is made. And you don't have to say, oh, and then he changed this, and oh, he now thinks about this. And now you don't have to just be in his mind. You can show how it comes out, because interactions with others are so visible and so easy to describe what has happened. So I just invite you to think about empathy as being one of those ideas that you want to use for that midpoint structure. And I would also like you to remember that we here on YouTube, we're here Mondays and Tuesdays. Compass, where we introduce the idea, and here the map day, where we go into detail about it. But there's another whole section, which is navigation, and that takes place over in LiLLiPub. You can find us over in LiLLiPub.org, and that's where we talk about with one another. We need a private setting for that, where we're not going to have scammers and we're not going to have ads blaring us in the face. And because of that, because it's a private community, there are dues, $8 a month, not outrageous, but just more to keep the ads out and to keep the scammers out. So it's just us. And we can talk about how are we navigating this whole concept of having the transitions, having how we're going to leverage that midpoint, possibly employing empathy to move our story forward. And we talk about that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and especially on Saturday when we get together live in Lilligunia land. We have a Zoom call every Saturday where we get to talk about these ideas and share with one another. So please do consider joining us, LiLLiPub.org. So that will do us for this week, and next week is the fun Zettelkasten week. That's all for now. Bye.
Thank you.